Hello, everyone. Welcome to the episode of the BG Show. I wanted to do a season 3 check-in of Reacher. I binged through the first 2 seasons. I'm now caught up on season 3. I think it's a very good show, and I wanted to talk about it. So let's just get right into it. Spoiler warning. So if you haven't seen the show yet, I highly recommend it. Start from season 1. I guess the seasons are loosely connected. You could watch out of order, but I think it makes way more sense to watch it in order. There's one character that's kind of like a through line throughout the seasons, so it probably makes sense to start from the beginning. And I also think season 1 is the best. Overall, big picture, obviously Alan Richardson is doing a great job. He comes from Blue Mountain State. He's bulked up a lot. Whether it was natural, whether it was steroids, I don't really care. This isn't sports, it's just acting. And I think it's a really quality show. I think there's no doubt about it that the show is such a throwback to the old Schwarzenegger movies where they're just like, they're not trying to subvert expectations. They're not trying to like make him vulnerable to make him more realistic. Like, no, he's straight up a huge guy who will kick the shit out of you. And if you piss him off, he will kick the shit out of you. And it's the exact type of show that just hasn't been made. This kind of just lean into more masculinity, don't really worry about who you're offending. They don't really have, I mean, there's a lot of 80s tropes, like he always, seemingly every single female character that he runs into is like a tough-nosed detective who eventually ends up having a romantic relationship with him. But overall, I think the show is good. What I like about the show is the difference between seasons 1, 2, and 3. They each seem to have a new season. I think season 1 is the best. I'd probably say season 1 is the best. And then, as of now, I think 3 is better than 2. But we'll see how they land it. But, it's not the type of show... I watch the show, it's not that I don't respect it as much, but I watch the show differently than I'd watch like a Severance, right? Where it's really important for them to like hit certain themes. For this show, it's like there are major storylines and it's action, and this is the type of show that just like keeps your year of content going. It's not made to like, change your life, but it's made to entertain you week to week to week. I actually didn't even realize that this was a weekly release because I was binging it. But I was glad to see that. I like having a show to watch every week. I think that's how TV was intended. I don't think the binge model is really great for TV. It kind of throws everything out of whack, and you're not able to appreciate each episode on its own. Going into this season, this season's obviously a little bit different. He's, covert. He kind of goes undercover into this guy's operation, and I guess the big difference between the 3 seasons are the set pieces. So season 1 is very like small town. So you have the courthouse, you have the small sheriff's office, which seemingly has one cell. And those are the main set pieces in around the town. Season 2 is very city-based. It's much sleeker. They're on planes, they're in the city, they're running around the city, that sort of thing. Season 3 is much more, I guess, kind of a mix, but more of like, okay, now we're going to go to like a compound, and we're going to spend most of our time at this gigantic compound. So I do like that. It kind of almost feels like you're playing a video game, going, to each different almost level. I don't know how realistic it is to the books. I haven't read the books, so I can't really say. I do know that Alan Richardson is more accurate to Reacher, versus Tom Cruise, who was even smaller than me. So it's good to see like a brute guy. Hemsworth probably would have been perfect, but he's Australian and he's too old. Not even too old, because Richardson is like 42, but he's already too saturated, I should say, from all those other performances. The good thing about Richardson is that we know him from Blue Mountain State, but he's not super known for anything else. Where now he will be known as Reacher for the rest of his career, which is a good thing. Plot details into this season. I like it. I think sometimes it's repetitive when, someone's like, hey, Mr. Reacher, and he's just like, it's just Reacher. I think, he does that a lot. I feel like a lot of the interactions, again, it's hard for me to tell if it's repetitive just because I've watched so much of it in a short amount of time, so maybe I've just binged so much. But whenever he has these conversations with people and they piss him off, and it just seems like they have a lot of the same interactions over and over again. But that's kind of the point of the character in the show, so I get it. Overall, I think this season is like maybe a 7.5 out of 10. It's not perfect. I do have some issues. I had an issue with the father character, Beck, who I don't think was menacing enough. But then it actually made sense because then Quinn is the real bad guy, and so Beck is just kind of like an underling, and that made sense. In the beginning of the season, when Beck was the big bad, I thought it was very underwhelming because the villains of the first two seasons, Robert Patrick, and then that whole crew in season one, I thought were much more menacing. So overall, Reacher I think is a high quality show. I think it's a win for Amazon, who seems to be leaning into heavily into these more, I guess you can say, masculine shows. The Chris Pratt, he was on Terminal List. He was in the Tomorrow War. A lot of these, not CIA, but like either Navy SEAL or former military. Cross, who was a detective. But yeah, I think there's no doubt about it that a show like Reacher is really tapping more into like middle America, and really trying to be kind of like the opposite of these, I guess you could say, coastal shows, which are very very seems like in the last 10 to 15 years have hit the same themes over and over again. This show is just trying to get back to old school masculinity, like Midwestern vibes, you know remind you of the 80s, remind you of how those things used to look, just with like more modern technology. So we'll see what happens with the end of the show, and then I'll do a ranking of the three seasons, and I'll get maybe more into more detail of each of the three seasons. But yeah, I like season one the most. I just think season one is not the most accurate, but I like kind of that small town thing. I thought the small town thing, with the detective and the cop and all the characters, kind of fit his character more. It reminded me a little bit of Rambo, just him being a wanderer in a smaller town. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I think it's a quality show and you should watch it. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.